Welcome back to Mind the People, everyone. Grab your coffee, settle in, and let's have a proper yarn. If you're watching over on the video version at youtube.com/at Mind the People, you will see I have got my trusty flat white right here. It is an absolute lifesaver, this Arvo. I am Alara, and today we are diving into something that I reckon is going to hit very close to home for a lot of you. We are talking about the workplace. Specifically, we are talking about a very particular type of toxic leadership that rots an organization from the inside out. So, in I've been thinking heaps about how we categorize bad bosses. Usually, we think of the yeller, the micromanager, or the person who takes credit for your work. But today, we are looking at a much more insidious character. We are looking at the senior executive who abandons their own actual job to meddle in absolutely everyone else's. This whole episode is inspired by a brilliant, fair dinkum masterpiece of an article I read recently. It is called The Commander in the Corridor, a Study of Institutional Betrayal at the top. It was written by Mahbub Zaman Ashrafi. Mahbub is a seasoned human resources professional with over a decade of experience across Bangladesh and Australia. The bloke really knows his stuff. He has handled over 100 disciplinary cases, and he writes with this incredible surgical precision about organisational behaviour. I will link the full piece in the show notes, but you can also find it directly over at ashrahimabub.substack.com. I highly recommend subscribing there if you are keen on written deep dives into HR leadership and ethics. So let us unpack this. Mahbub opens by talking about this familiar figure he has seen time and time again in financial firms. He notes that this pattern appears most vividly in smaller firms with maybe 200 to 2,000 staff. In those environments, everyone knows everyone and roles constantly overlap. He writes that this archetype sits right at the top of the food chain. This is not some mid-level manager trying to climb the ladder. This is someone who already has a massive portfolio, yet for some reason they are drawn persistently towards the work of others. We have all met this person, right? The executive whose own department is an absolute shambles, but they are always in your office telling you how to run your marketing campaign or how to handle your IT procurement. Mahbub says this figure is perpetually full of the wrong conversations. They offer unsolicited views on decisions that have nothing to do with them. Meanwhile, their own teams are completely adrift, and their own targets are quietly missed quarter after quarter. Crikey, it makes my blood boil just thinking about it. Needin. It is not just annoying. Mahbub makes the point that in a highly interdependent business like a bank, this figure is genuinely corrosive. They distort decision-making and they completely extinguish psychological safety. If left unchecked, they create massive regulatory risks that the board eventually has to clean up. Mahbub gives this archetype a name, and I absolutely love the historical context here. He calls this figure Mr. Mir Jafor. For those of us who might need a quick history lesson, Mir Jafor was the commander-in-chief of the Nawab of Bengal back in the 1700s. He was a trusted insider who completely betrayed his leader at the Battle of Plassey in 1757, which essentially opened the door for British rule in the subcontinent. Talk about a heavy legacy. But Mahbub chooses this name deliberately. He says the damage the senior figure causes is not the damage of an outsider. It is the damage of someone who holds the full trust and authority of the institution, but who actively works against its interests from the inside through their own ego and overreach. This Mr. Mir Jafor character has a very specific profile. They have a compulsive curiosity about what other departments are doing, paired with a persistent failure to hit their own KPIs. They bypass the chain of command. And because they are so senior, nobody feels like they have the authority to tell them to rack off. If a junior staffer oversteps, you pull them up immediately. But when a C-suite executive wanders into your meeting and starts dictating terms, everyone just freezes. Mahbub points out that this person is a master of office politics. They build alliances, they gather loyalists, and if you dare challenge them, they will undermine your character behind your back. Most wild of all, they lack the self-awareness to realize they are doing any damage. They genuinely believe they are the hero keeping the whole company afloat. It is exhausting. Just reading about it drains my social battery. Actually, this ties in perfectly with a message I got from a listener just before we started recording. I always love hearing your stories, and if you ever want to share a quick take or a live reaction while you're listening, definitely tag me over on X, formerly Twitter, at x.com/Shrafi99. This email is from Liam in Brisbane. Liam writes, "Hey Alara, love the show. I am currently dealing with exactly this kind of bloke. Our head of operations spends half his week hovering around the design team, giving feedback on colour palettes and website copy. Meanwhile, our actual supply chain is a month behind schedule and his staff are miserable. When I tried to politely suggest we focus on the logistics backlog, he told the CEO I was not a team player and lacked strategic vision. I am honestly ready to quit." Oh, Liam, I am so sorry you are dealing with that. It is incredibly validating to hear it, though, because it proves Mahbub's point exactly. You try to push back and suddenly you are the problems. Thank you for sharing that, Liam. Hang in there and definitely send this episode to your HR department anonymously. Let us get back to the article because Mahbub dives into the psychology beneath this behaviour, and this is where it gets really fascinating. He warns us not to just write this person off as a cartoon villain or a tricky personality. There is deep psychology at play. He brings up the Dunning-Kruger effect. We have talked about this on the podcast before. It is the idea that people with limited competence in a certain area lack the mental capacity to recognize their own incompetence. Mahbub writes, "The mind cannot, in effect, see what it does not know." Mr. Mir Jafor genuinely believes he's an expert in everything because he literally cannot perceive the depth of his own ignorance. His confidence is not an act. It is a terrifying lack of self-perception. Mahbub also touches on the dark triad of personality traits. We're talking subclinical narcissism and Machiavellianism. This explains the grandiose self-image, the hunger for admiration, and the willingness to throw colleagues under the bus for a bit of positional gain. But here is the part that really made me sit back and think. Mahbub says beneath all that bluster sits a fragile self-concept. It is compensatory behaviour. When an executive deep down feels like they do not actually have the strategic chops for their massive role, they overcompensate. They meddle in other people's business to prove to themselves that they matter. They hoard information and create artificial bottlenecks just to feel indispensable. It is territorial anxiety. As Mahbub brilliantly puts it, status seeking in these environments is not a bug of the personality. It is a feature of the context. Understanding this does not excuse the behavior, obviously. But as Mahbub says, intervention without understanding always fails. You cannot fix a problem if you do not understand the mechanics of it. I am going to take a very quick break here to pay the bills. When we come back, we are going to look at exactly why organizations let these toxic leaders get away with it, and more importantly, how to finally stop them. Do not go anywhere. All right, let us take a moment to talk about something that keeps me going during these long podcasting sessions. You all know I am absolutely reliant on a good brew to keep my brain ticking. That is why I'm so thrilled to partner with Outback Roasters for today's episode. Finding a coffee that is ethically sourced, roasts the beans to absolute perfection, and delivers right to your door is surprisingly hard. But Outback Roasters does it all. They work directly with small batch farmers, ensuring fair wages and sustainable practices. Their midnight run espresso blend has a rich chocolatey profile with just a hint of native wattle seed that is fair dinkum incredible. It is exactly what you need to kickstart a tough morning or power through an afternoon slump. Head over to outbackroasters.com.au and use the code MINDHEPPABLE at checkout for 20% off your first subscription order. Treat yourself to a better cup of coffee. You deserve it. Welcome back. Before the break, we were digging into the psychology of the Mr. Mir Jafor archetype based on Mahbub Zaman Ashrafi's incredible article. If you want to find all of Mahbub's work in one place, make sure you bookmark his central hub at ashrafimahbub.com. You can find his past articles and professional updates there. Now, let us tackle the big question. Why on earth do companies put up with this? If this person is so damaging, why are they not marched out the door? Mahbub lays out 5 structural enablers, and they are painfully accurate. First up is weak governance. He is talking about boards and executive committees that do not set clear, measurable KPIs. If you do not have hard data on what a senior executive is supposed to achieve, then underperformance just becomes a matter of opinion. And a loud, confident executive will always win a battle of opinions. Second is absent performance accountability. This is when appraisals are just a tick box exercise and leaders are too scared to have difficult conversations with highly ranked colleagues. So the bad behaviour just continues because there are zero consequences. Third is conflict averse leadership at the very top. Mahbub points out that many CEOs are integrators. They want harmony. They hate confronting a senior peer, and the Mr. Mir Jafor character sniffs that weakness out immediately and exploits it. The fourth enabler is cultural deference. Mahbub notes this is particularly strong in South Asian institutional contexts, where challenging a senior colleague is socially very costly. He says he saw the contrast clearly moving between Sydney and Dhaka, but he makes a great point. Even in places like Australia, deference still happens. It just turns into whispered complaints in the break room rather than formal governance actions. The fifth enabler is the one that frustrates me the most. It is the confusion of assertiveness with competence. We see this everywhere. People assume the loudest voice in the room is the smartest. When that loud voice also has a fancy, sweet title, it becomes almost impossible to challenge. Volume is mistaken for signal. So, what does this cost the company? Everything. Mahbub says the cost accrues slowly, and then all at once. The first casualty is psychological safety. Good people just stop speaking up. They stop dissenting. They try to work around the toxic executive. The quiet, competent middle layer of the business just shrinks away. Then decision-making gets distorted. The loudest person bullies committees into bad policies or risky financial moves. You do not see the damage until a massive regulatory failure or customer complaint blows up in your face. And then comes the attrition. High performers do not stick around for this nonsense. They quietly pack up and leave. The company usually lies to itself and blames the market or salary expectations, but the truth is the capable staff just decided the toxic environment was not worth their mental health. Mahbub estimates it costs between 100,000 to 500,000 taka to replace just one mid-level departure in Bangladesh. That is a huge financial hit, not even counting the loss of institutional memory. If you are listening to this and nodding along, I would love for you to join the conversation over on LinkedIn. It is a great place to connect professionally and discuss these leadership challenges. You can find Mahbub's profile directly at linkedin.com/inasharfamahbub, and you can find my page linked there too. Let us get a proper discussion going in the comments this week. Mahbub is absolutely uncompromising on the next point, and I love him for it. He says intervening is a duty, not an option. It is not about whether a CEO prefers to avoid conflict. If you are running a business, you have a fiduciary duty to your employees, your shareholders, and your customers. Letting one executive destroy the culture is a breach of that duty. A CEO who tolerates this behavior is not being nice. They're failing their own office. So how do we fix it? Mahbub provides a very clear 6-step HR framework. Step 1, objective performance documentation. You have to measure their actual portfolio objectives dispassionately. You need hard evidence before you even start the conversation, otherwise they will just deflect and blame everyone else. Step 2, behavioural evidence gathering. Run a proper 360-degree review using an external party so they cannot dismiss the feedback. Get confidential interviews from peers and subordinates. Step 3, a direct written performance conversation led by the CEO. It has to be specific. It has to reference the missed KPIs and the bad behaviour, and it must be recorded in writing. Vague feedback just leads to vague outcomes. Step 4, coaching. If the executive actually wants to change, put them through structured executive coaching for 9 to 12 months. Mahbub says this works about a third of the time. Step 5 is where it gets real. If they will not change, it is time for role redesign or lawful separation. Either strip away their authority and isolate them, or manage them out of the business completely, following all the proper legal and contractual rules. You cannot just tolerate them indefinitely. Step 6 is about fixing the organization. You have to reinforce the chain of command. Clarify who actually has decision-making rights so this cannot happen again. As we wrap up today, I want to read Mahbub's closing reflection because it is incredibly poetic and powerful. He writes, Mr. Mir Jafor is not, in the end, a dramatic figure. This type of personality does not steal or defraud or bring the institution to the brink of collapse in a single stroke. The damage is quieter than that. This figure occupies space. This figure occupies space. This figure absorbs attention. This figure displaces better people. This figure shaped by a mere tolerated presence, the unspoken curriculum by which everyone else in the organization learns what really matters. The unspoken curriculum. What a phenomenal phrase. It means that what you tolerate becomes your actual company culture, regardless of what your mission statement says. He finishes by saying that an institution that harbors such a figure eventually pays the price. Fixing it requires a quiet, uncelebrated type of leadership. It takes discipline to act when action is uncomfortable. The leaders who do this well understand that a company is simply the sum of the behaviours it is prepared to permit. I reckon that is the perfect thought to leave you with today. What behaviours are being permitted in your workplace? And if you're in a position of leadership, what are you pretending not to see? Well, that was a heavy one, but a necessary one. A massive thank you to Mahbub Zaman Ashrafi for writing such an insightful piece. Be sure to check out the full article on his Substack, visit his website, or connect with him on LinkedIn. I will drop all those links in the show notes for you. Next week, we are switching gears entirely. I will be diving into the strange world of forced corporate fun and why mandated team building exercises usually make everyone miserable. I have a brilliant guest lined up for that one, so make sure you are subscribed wherever you get your podcast so you do not miss it. Until then, please share this episode with a mate who might need to hear it. Leave us a 5-star review if you are feeling generous and send all your thoughts, questions, and pushback through X, YouTube, or via the website. I love hearing from you all. Look after yourselves, look after each other, and I will catch you next time. Cheers!